So I'm finally producing mushrooms that don't have any mold growing on them. But the problem with these at the moment is that they're still not making a very good yield at the end. Most likely because how the pins are getting so much of a head start around the sides, and then it just throws off the cycle of the fruiting process. So really what happens is then that the mushrooms that form at the top are really kind of ones that would have the last chance of coming out. And then you can see what happens is a good number of the pins abort, don't go anywhere. And in some cases, like here you can see, they get a little bit of mold on them too. There's not enough that seems to cause any problems. And it's all the blue-green style mold. But I'll have to keep an eye on it. So I'm satisfied with getting some good results on these, at least. You know, some results. And I'm going to chop down a good bit of these today. But I've got a better way, I think, I'm going to do these new blocks. These ones too were same style, the two layer, but again you can see that the pins on the side are a bit farther along than any of the top. So what I'm doing now, and I think this is hopefully is going to be a better solution, is instead of taking a couple of the bags, busting it up, and adding a layer on top, I just go ahead and rough up the top of each block and kind of mix it in with itself. And essentially that's about the same thing that would go on breaking up one, throwing on the top. So I'll show you how I'm going about doing that. You can see that I have 6 of these bags that I've let colonize for about 14-15 days. And I've cut the tops off, leaving about 2 inches of plastic, and I've also taken a finger sanitized with alcohol and wiped the inside rims off so they're clean. And what I'm going to do next is take a good sturdy spoon and sanitize it with some alcohol as well. And you can see how each one of these bags still has a lot of the uncolonized sawdust. So I'm just going to start at the end closest to me and go down about a ½ inch into it and just scrape it. I wouldn't recommend using like a fork or a knife to do this just because you might cut the inside of the bag. And a spoon works just fine to get it. It comes off pretty easy. And just take it and kind of give it a little bit of a chop. And then a little bit of a mix-up. And hopefully that'll mix up all that uncolonized stuff on the top well enough. All this other. You don't want to be too rough with it, because the more you bruise it up, the longer it's going to take to recover. What this also might do as well is kind of give a reset to the fruiting conditions at the top, and maybe allow a more properly formed pin set to be developed. And I won't have an issue where like those other bags where the pinning on the side gets ahead of everything, causes the pinning on top to abruptly stop before it's time. You might hit a hard chunk of solid is make sure they didn't break up too well. Just use the spoon to stab it apart. Give it a rinse off between. Then I'll sanitize my hands with some alcohol. Dry off a little bit. And then take your hand and pack down the broken up bits as best you can. Try to fill any gaps on the side and get it down as flat and evenly as possible. It won't matter too much if it's uneven, just because we're going to throw a layer of casing mix on top of it. But it's more important to get it all packed around the edges so they don't have any gaps there. Hands rinse. And then, still using about one large handful per bag. Spreading it off. Make sure you don't mix any of the broken up layer with the vermiculite top. Just spread it out. And then give it a mild packing as well. Flatten out the top. I thought before that maybe keeping the vermiculite loose on the top would be better. But I'm thinking now you want it a little bit packed down just to be a bit more of a border in between any mold spores and the air getting in there. You can see there's not a whole lot of plastic left on top, but that's alright. I'm interested to see too if these have the behavior where some of the mycelium will want to grow up through the vermiculite and kind of colonize it a little bit before it starts to fruit, or if it's just going to fruit right from underneath of it and pin right through it without any colonization. Preferably that's what I would want. But in the end, you're going to have to tear the top off, most likely, and recase it. So it doesn't really matter if it's growing through it or not. It's all getting removed. Alright, that should do it. So, I've only made one set of these a couple days ago. So, it'll be a week before I see some results with that, so I'll give you an update then. So while I'm waiting to see some definitive results on the bags that I've used a spoon to crunch the top off, I've been still experimenting. You can see here where I've used the same spoon and kind of used the edge of it and kind of raked around the bag to bruise these pins up. Now I've done that before and I really couldn't tell if I had good results from that. The idea being that if you stop the pins around the side, you'll encourage more to go towards the top. But I don't know if that's going to be true, because it looks like the pin sets coming out of the top of these are really about the same as everything else. But I've done it on here too a bit earlier, just to see how well they've done. And these ones I've bruised up that I also did the spoon and scraped the top as well, so you combination of two, is how it does. Now these ones over here, I thought about, well, possibly my problem is that I'm waiting too long to bring these bags down here. I've been usually waiting about day 15 or so, about 3 or 4 days after they fully colonized. And half the time I will notice that I'll get some starts of pins forming when I cut open the bags, even before I get the casing mix on it. And if you remember back here, I had one of those bags that it was actually pinning up through the bottom layer, or from the bottom layer through the crumbled up layer, and then through the casing mix. So if pins are there at the start, I think they're kind of want to encourage to grow. And I think something about these sawdust blocks too is that when they begin to fruit, the mycelium doesn't want to go back into a kind of a vegetative state. It wants to stop colonizing and looking for new food, or at least slow down that process. So I think that getting the bags in here earlier, and even with some that still had some sawdust on the bottom of it not colonized, but as long as everything around the sides and the top is colonized, is fine. But getting them down here earlier might encourage the mycelium to regrow the top in time enough that it pins on the top before it pins all over the sides. And these ones I gave the spoon to as well. Now, something I thought about as well, if you can see over here, over here, a lot of these bags, the mycelium is growing through the vermiculite almost all the way, or almost fully colonized on top. That usually hasn't happened. And I was wondering why I'm getting the mycelium to grow through so much. And all I can think of that I've done differently with these bags is that I've packed the vermiculite down with the back of my hands a bit more. Not real hard, but enough that it's cut off some of the air exchange underneath, and probably increased CO2 levels, which encourage the mycelium to be more of a vegetative growing instead of trying to make pins and fruit. And if you remember back here, the ones that I had, I only put the vermiculite casing on pretty loose. And so that could be the difference between that. And so I thought, well, I wonder if possibly if I got these down here early and I didn't even use a spoon and I just put the vermiculite on top, even with the uncolonized sawdust mixture that's on top of the blocks, I bet if I pack the vermiculite down hard enough, it will encourage the mycelium underneath to grow up and colonize the uncolonized sawdust in time before the mold gets to it. And I'm pretty hopeful that that'll work, and it makes me wonder if that's possibly why I've had success and failure at different points in time, because I know I've had these similar problems before, even in the winter. And I'm sure maybe even too when I used to mist twice a day and mist the vermiculite even with no pins forming on it, I imagine that getting the vermiculite even wetter will cut off some of the air exchange, because you figure if it's wet it packs down a bit harder and doesn't let the air breathe down into it. So kind of cutting off the air a little bit hopefully will force it to grow up really hard and fast and eat up that uncolonized sawdust. So in a few days I'll get some results on these first bags I used the spoon on, and I'm hoping I'm not going to end up with white mold on these, but I'm willing to take the risk to make this work.